we're going to talk about scaling tech nationwide. You'll notice from the audience, from the panel, that it's not necessarily EarthRanger. So let me introduce you. I'll just, Claudine, come up, please. Claudine Cloete is from Namibia, MEFT. Just if everybody can take a seat, I'll introduce them properly just now. George Osuri from KWS in Kenya. Ed Arkle from 51 Degrees in Kenya as well. And Victor Matsanza, also from KWS in Kenya. So two of them have got short presentations that we'd like to go through, and then we can open the discussion in a panel format. I do want to keep it fairly open and interactive because we do have the Tanzanian delegation. Where are you guys? Oh, there they are. Okay. So the folks from Tanzania would also like to discuss, or I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions from yourselves around nationwide deployments. And the Zimbabwe, the Zimparks guys, where are you? Oh, here we go. Thanks, guys. And if there's anybody else from a national authority that I'm not aware of that is here that wants to discuss things, please ask me. Do you want to put up your hands now, whoever's from a national authority that wants to talk about nationwide deployments? Okay, cool. So it'll mainly be Kenya, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Tanzania. We are actually, just as a matter of interest, we are busy with a number of nationwide deployments in Latin America. Unfortunately, not many of the folks could get across here, but we are expanding in those national deployments quite a lot. So, okay, sorry, here's the introduction. So George Osuri from KWS, Claudine, Victor, and Edward, who I've already introduced. So we're going to go through some of the deployments that we do have from a national point of view. Well, one of them is in Kenya. Ed, I'm going to ask you to talk through that.
Okay, welcome everybody. So what we've done in partnership with KWS in Kenya is to create EarthRanger on a national scale, where we can use it as a national tool to gather information, data from all across the entire country, all of the Kenya Wildlife Service national parks, as well as many of the conservation partners who are also using EarthRanger and SMART within Kenya to share their data with Kenya Wildlife Service. So to do that, we agreed on a structure on how to build EarthRanger to work with that model, where we created multiple sites for Kenya Wildlife Service, and those multiple sites feed into a central site, which is based in Nairobi, in the capital, at the headquarters, who are then able to get a complete picture of what's happening across the country from any of the other ones. So the way Kenya Wildlife Service works is that they divide the country into conservation areas. There's 8 conservation areas. So we created a EarthRanger site for each conservation area. Okay? So this is the regional structure that you can decide to maybe go for if you're looking to go down this route. So you have the central command center, as it's seen over there. And then you have your different regions, conservation areas. Those could be counties. Those could be provinces, whatever fits into your model. And each one has a site that then feeds into that national command center. Underneath those regions, you can have each of the parks and stations, whatever your data sensors are that are bringing in data for you. Partner organizations. Okay, so in Kenya we have private conservancies, we have NGOs who are using EarthRanger. They feed their information that's useful for KWS directly to the KWS site, depending on which site they fall under. So KWS now has access to that information coming in, whether it's human-wildlife conflict, which is probably the most important one at the moment, and then they can act on that based on what's coming in from those organizations. Okay. That's one way of doing it. Another way of looking at it is the departmental EarthRanger structure. So instead of having a geographical structure where you have each region having its own EarthRanger site, you can have different departments that have their own EarthRanger site. Okay. So, for example, you might have wildlife security, park management, research, intelligence, and then each one has their own, and they work with it. They put their data onto those sites. Those sites now share their data into a central EarthRanger site at a joint operations command center. Okay. And as you can see, this is something that we're working on at the moment at a different site. And they'll have lots of different organizations, lots of different law enforcement areas that they're going to be feeding into a central site that's going to be overlooking the entire thing. Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, so we're going to hand over to Claudine now from... Okay, sorry. So Claudine's going to talk about the setup in Namibia, which is a SMART-based one. So, yeah.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Maybe the clicker. Thank you. So in Namibia, we use SMART for monitoring in all of our protected areas, as well as in some of our communal conservancies as well. We first piloted SMART in 2016 in Etosha National Park, and building on the success of that deployment, we rolled it out to the northeastern parks, and then last year we set up the coastal parks, and this year some of the smaller parks. Currently, there are only like 3 parks that don't use SMART, but there are plans to roll it out to those parks as well. So what we monitor is for park management, biodiversity, threats and things like that, as well as law enforcement, our high-value species, such as our rhinos and carnivores, conservation hunting outside of protected areas, as well as human-wildlife conflict. Some of the main challenges that we've had with the national SMART deployment is inadequate staff capacity. This is due to an aging staff structure, but also staff transfers or promotions. And so therefore we have to retrain, keep training new staff to take over the capacity, or to take over this for monitoring and to make sure that the system is actually running. We have a support team, I'll come to that later, but due to other factors, we can't do enough support visits regularly. There's also a reluctance of our staff to embrace technology. People still prefer the paper-based method of monitoring. So really it comes down to reinforcing, retraining, and making sure that everybody on all levels really understand the value of monitoring and using technology, making people's lives more easier. Then also in Namibia, we have lack of infrastructure or adequate infrastructure for online systems of monitoring. So many of our sites currently with SMART is offline. There's only one site that we are using SMART Connect for, as well as for the human-wildlife conflict that's also on Connect. Some of the successes that we've experienced with the national rollout of SMART in Namibia is that we have some protocols, standardized protocols for monitoring using SMART. We also are in the process in developing a SMART strategy for the country. We've established a SMART support and coordination team. Through SMART, we've enhanced our monitoring capacity, and now decisions are based on data and not just on ad hoc things. We've also improved our reporting and as well as resource allocations. So just to give you an overview of what our support and coordination team looks like, we have a national SMART coordinator, and then we've got some technical leads, support leads, and then in the different regions or in the different protected areas, we've got focal people who are really the champions, and these people are critical in their roles to really make sure that the uptake of SMART and the continuation of the system for monitoring really lasts. Earlier I said that we don't do many support visits. It's actually because this coordination unit, it's not a real unit within our ministry. It's people that have other roles as well. So this is just an additional thing. So time is really not always there to go out into the field and provide the necessary support. Ideally, we would want to have this unit to be based at headquarters, and that's all that they do. Knowledge management for the ministry would be crucial. So the key lessons that we've learned since the first deployment of SMART in Etosha National Park to where we are right now is that the ownership of the data should be within government, should be with the ministry, and we should be in charge of it. And having people involved at different levels, from the field rangers all the way up to the managers in the data model development, as well as in how the information is captured and then disseminated later on, is also critical. As well as institutional capacity building, having people at different levels knowing how to use the tool, what to monitor, how to extract information out of it, and report on the information that's been captured. And using this data, very important, using this data for adaptive management, as well as then strengthening the partnerships that we've built with, not only within MEFT, but also our supporting donors and partners. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudine. Thanks so much. What I did want to also mention about Namibia, Claudine's described the SMART nationwide deployment. In parallel with that, from an EarthRanger point of view, there is information that is being fed through from several different elephant collaring and management organizations. So NUST, Namibia University of Science and Technology, collars a lot of elephants, and so does ERA. Christian, are you here somewhere? Not. So they try and mitigate elephant-human conflict, human-elephant conflict. So what they're doing from a nationwide point of view is those two different organizations that have EarthRanger themselves are sharing that data with MEFT as well to try and reduce human-elephant conflict. So what they've done is they've set up proximity alerts around wells because there are a lot of free-roaming desert elephants and very scarce water resources. So they've set up proximity alerts, they've set up geofence boundaries, and that information is fed through to the various, at this moment, the two different EarthRanger instances, which then in turn feed the MEFT instance of EarthRanger, and then alerts go out to the various relevant parties. So these are two parallel nationwide type of deployments within Namibia, one being SMART, one being EarthRanger. The EarthRanger one is still in its infancy, hence no one up here really to talk about it. But yeah, at some stage we will start combining the data through the National Data Center. Okay. So thanks everybody for that. I do want to start in an open, interactive panel type of way, just to ask about some of the questions, and I'm very happy to welcome questions from the floor as well. But I think that Claudine did go across through some of the lessons learned, but I do want to hear from the Kenyan environment. George, maybe you could give us some idea about some of the challenges that you faced with a nationwide deployment.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here just to share experiences about what we've gone through in as far as utilizing EarthRanger is concerned from the Kenyan experience. And I think in broader terms, it's not very different in terms of challenges from what Claudine has explained here. You realize that because we are rolling it out on a national scale basis, one of the things that we've really grappled with is putting in place the requisite infrastructure. because again, like we've demonstrated here, you know, we have 8 regions. But now we've just put command centers at those regional headquarters. But then these regional headquarters need to be, you know, serviced with the data from the various parks and stations that are within those conservation areas. So putting in the infrastructure in each and every of those protected areas is a going concern. It requires a lot of resource mobilization. And then the other experience we've had is, you know, inability of people to embrace technology. Remember, the people whom we are using mostly to collect this data are rangers. Because our experience in Kenya is the way we've customized EarthRanger, currently we are using it for human-wildlife conflict management, as well as security and intelligence operations. So most of the people who are collecting this data on the ground there are rangers. And for some time, they've had that apathy. And I can say this is because of, you know, a limited capacity. So a lot of trainings have gone on. So far, since we rolled out EarthRanger, we've done more than 60 trainings, targeting around 1,700 individuals. Now, this is a small number considering the total number of staff we have as an organization. So we are seeing progressively people embracing this technology, but it requires continuous, you know, capacity building. The other thing that comes to mind, you know, when you're looking at a nationwide, you know, space, is the issue of connectivity. Most of our areas, and as you know, are in very remote places with very poor communication infrastructure. So you really need to invest heavily on connectivity. So this is something that we are also working with in collaboration with the various partners and other government agencies, just to ensure that then we are able to ensure proper connectivity. You can imagine rangers doing patrol in a park without any, you know, communication infrastructure. You'll collect data, but then it'll take time for you to upload it on the system so that it can be useful. But on the side of successes, we've seen a huge turnaround. Because for one, now we are able to dedicate and appropriate resources where they are supposed to be. Because we are informed. We know where the problems are and what we need to do in terms of resource allocation. And this one helps even in planning. Because when you are planning, you already know where to focus. This is very different from how we used to do it before. You know, you just sit in a boardroom and start imagining things which are not factual, which are not based on real information. But with this platform, we are seeing that we are able to be in sync, you know, from different areas. We are able to map out problematic areas, and it has really improved the way we do our whole, you know, planning and resource allocation. Then, you know, this also has encouraged the issue of ownership. You can imagine a ranger working with a tablet, you know, inputting the data. At the end of the day, in the evening, they are able to tell themselves, at least today, I can measure what I've been able to do. As opposed to previously where people just go and they come back. When you put them to task, they can not really quantify what they've been able to do. This, you know, has brought about the issue of, you know, motivation. Because at the end of the day, it builds confidence in people. They know if they work hard, then they're going to be incentivized. This is the next step now as an organization we're heading to, you know, coming up with the reward systems. Of course, we know you've been employed to do a particular type of work, but we also need to incentivize you so that you can work more harder. This system is able to do that. You know, at the end of the month, if you are able to, you know, a project, you know, team efforts, individual efforts, it feels good at the end of the day. So these are some of the experiences we are having as an organization. Like you heard here, we have about 30 entities that are on EarthRanger, 10 of them within KWS, and about 20 from our other partners. So we are able actually to share that data. The only thing now we are finalizing is data sharing protocols, so that then we know what to share and that kind of thing. And it's coming out very, 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 very nicely. So I think I want to stop there, Bruce, and say thank you so much.
Thank you, George. With this, a lot of data coming in from a lot of different sources, data integrity is, and making sure that the data is consistent would be a challenge. So, Claudine, I'm going to pose that question to you. How do you make sure that the data is consistent, feeding through to a central place?
Well, thank you for the question. It really boils down to having standardized data models, so making sure that every
the data, but also who's using it. So I just want to touch on training and what sort of effort is involved. And Ed, I'm going to pose this question to you. Being one of the providers, and this is also another key element in one of these national rollouts, is to have the key partners involved in supplying that capacity. So Ed, just tell us a little bit about the effort involved and how you go about training on a large scale.
Thank you, Bruce. So, there's been a bit of trial and error from when we started a few years ago with KWS until now. But I think through the way we found what works best. So what we've done in terms of our trainings is every time we go to a new location where we're going to start training the rangers on how to use EarthRanger, how to put data into the system, how to collect it, we'll go in for 3 to 4 day trainings. Deeply immersive, make sure we take them out into the field, make sure that they understand everything that's happening. And then what we found that is absolutely critical is to make sure that you go back after a couple of months. Take 2 to 3 months and then go back in there and do a refresher course with them again. Anytime that you go in and do a training and then you don't go back, what you'll find is that there's a huge uptake, there's lots of data coming in, it's wonderful. After a couple of months, you'll start seeing that dropping away. And going down. But if you go back and you do a refresher course, you'll see that tick up again. Once you've done 4 or 5 refresher courses, it stays up. And it sort of sinks in, and now people have got it, they've got the gist of it, they know exactly what they're doing, and they'll continue with that standard. So we go in and we do just 2 to 3 day refresher courses regularly. On top of that, what I think is absolutely critical is training management on EarthRanger as well. As well as the rangers, it's also very, very important to make sure that you get senior officers, management, whoever it might be, in the room as well, and you teach them about using EarthRanger as a management tool and how it can benefit their roles and what they're doing for the organization that they're working in. If you don't have buy-in from the management, the rangers themselves will lose interest very quickly. So it's important that the management is there, they're interested, and that they're pushing for that information. And even in places where we found, for example, you might come across senior management who, for example, aren't too computer literate, they're not really interested in computers, but once you show them the capability of EarthRanger, they'll go to the ones putting in the data, they'll go to the command centers and they say, right, I need to see this, this, and this on the map, or I need to find a report on this. And once they're able to get those reports very quickly compared to what they used to do before, then they really see the value of EarthRanger, and they start putting pressure now on their own staff to start using the system more and more. Okay.
Thanks, Ed. You're getting an idea now that this is a fairly large undertaking. So Claudine is the National SMART Coordinator in Namibia for MEFT. Similarly, within Kenya, Victor is the key liaison between KWS and EarthRanger and 51 Degrees. So Victor, yeah, tell us a little bit about your role, what is required of you in that role of key liaison point.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'll state just a bit of what we've been able to do and what my role has been. When we started, it was just a simple thing. It was a dream and an idea that we've really worked together through as a journey, just like any other systems or any other process. Change, when you look at change, is a process in itself. So for any success to come in, first you need to look at what are your gaps, what are you intending to achieve by the end of the day. Buying the same from my background, I'm a telecommunication engineer by training and by practice. You find for you to achieve a certain specific thing, first of all, once you identify the gap, you look at the solutions. So we always work backwards. Look at the solutions and then now look at the means to attain that solution. So that again came in very handy. Now when it comes to a system like EarthRanger, we looked at what we were having initially. You realize that we used to have several data models across the entire organization. Like everyone was having their own format. So we tried to look around and see what works for us well. And standardization came in. So we came up with standardized templates, which are now, I can say I'm happy that is being used even with our partners, so that now it assists us now in terms of data sharing. And now as a coordinator, the role was first of all to see us rolling technology across the country. And two, tapping into spaces that is other partners around. Because you realize that Kenya, KWS is a mandated institution to manage wildlife related issues across the entire country. And for us to add more value, partners comes in, and this is just to create a synergy. Because where KWS is not there, partners are there. So our reach is expanded. And that has really worked out, to our advantage and to the entire country's advantage. Now, when you look at the entire setup, I'm happy that she talked about the entire setup that they use and just in terms of data management and protocols. Same to us, we started by looking at the top tier, like managers. What do they want to see? They want to see data coming in, and they are able to analyze that data and make decisions. Because the beauty with data is collecting data is not the only solution, but analyzing data and making solution out of that data is what makes more sense. So KWS looked at it, and we decided now, having EarthRanger as a system, we are able now to get all the necessary incidences and analyze that data, identify our hotspot areas, so that then we make an informed decision. Just as my colleague, Mr. George said, that right now we're making everything based on the data that is analyzed. All right? And I believe this is the same thing that all of us were looking at. What solutions do we get out of the systems? And talking about data, you realize that in trainings, we always try to encourage guys not to put in garbage, because you remember garbage in, garbage out. So if you teach people on how to do proper job, by the end of the day, you'll make an informed decision that is very well guided. And it's been a journey, and it's a journey that I enjoy doing. And I'll take a minute or a second to say, when you look, I always refer in our trainings with Edward on Who Moved My Cheese. I know that's a simple book that everyone has read at some point. Moving in that maze is like now diving into the entire situations, challenges that we're having. The process in itself is what makes sense. How do we look at this scenario? We are in a maze. We're trying to look at a solution. We're trying to look at our cheese station. We've identified our cheese station C. Are we going to sit down there and say, now we are enjoying our cheese, we can move forward? You realize no, because you might be eating stale cheese. So we have to keep on going, looking for the new cheese station. And that's now where technology is taking us. That we used to do these things in this format, this way, but now technology comes in and it keeps on changing very fast. So the faster we smell the cheese, the better we become. So I believe this will also serve as a lesson to our colleagues and our friends who also wants to dive into technology. Let's move together, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, so that by the end of the day, we'll sit back and say, we are eating fresh cheese and enjoying all of us together. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. So what I do want to bring up now is the data that typically gets fed up should be more summarized from a more senior point of view and more summarized information, but still information for decision making. So from anyone in, maybe we can start with Claudine, that data that reaches headquarters, how do you summarize it? Is it summarized? And how is it still relevant from a decision-making point of view?
Well, yeah, so you have different types of reports, right? The report that a park manager needs is not going to be the same as what a manager sitting at headquarters would need. So we have different types of reporting for SMART. So currently, because we don't have Connect, we are sharing data using USB dongles or external hard drives to move from park level to regional level, but not yet to headquarter level. We would ideally, the next step would be to set up Smart Connect for our country, entire country, so that the managers can extract information relevant for them. But definitely having specific reports for different types of managers is important.
Thanks, Claudine. George, would you like to comment on that as well?
Yeah, sure. Just like she said, different levels require different types of reporting. For us, our experience has been, we have command centers up to the national level. That is headquarters. So we are actually able to have an eagle's view of what is happening across the country. That is senior management. And for KWS, we normally have periodic senior management meetings, and we use a lot of information derived from EarthRanger to be able to just have a look at what needs to be done, what are the emerging issues, what are the trends, and what do we need to focus into. So it really gives us an opportunity just to look at the entire country, what are the emerging issues, and where our efforts are supposed to be, geared towards. What kind of support, for example, do we want, are we supposed to give a specific region where we see an issue, having popped out from? What level of engagement, for example, do we need to get into or to support some of these regions with for purposes of ensuring that we pull in the right direction?
Thank you, George. Before we open up to the floor, I do want to mention one more country where there is a de facto nationwide deployment. It's Mozambique. And this is almost a reverse direction to what you've been hearing here now, where ANAC, the national authority in Mozambique, has been receiving fire alerts through Aurora Tech at a central level, and they're distributing that out, or they plan to rather, distribute that out to all of the different national parks from a central point of view. So it doesn't have to be one direction, it could be both directions. But just to give you a sort of a flavor of the sorts of national deployments that we have going on out there. So having covered the main topics, I'd like to open it to the floor for questions, please. Peter.
All right, so I'm Peter Emming. Connect, but how do you foresee using Connect to have all the data come together, but again, having that privacy not being able to see, or security, not being able to see all the sensitive data, or locking that down? Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's the reason why we want to move to Connect, right, for easier sharing of data. But also on Connect, you've got different levels of access. So you could give access to certain people and them just having a dashboard displaying so that they don't actually have access to the actual data, right, so that information cannot be disseminated unregulated. But yeah, so your first question, I can't remember what it was. Can you please repeat it?
Okay, so I think we can start just on looking at access, and I think you answered that by saying you're giving summarized information. And the detailed information, how would you give access to that? And then the second one was the setup of SMART. How do you decide that it's one instance? Or in SMART, they call it conservation area, so giving one conservation area versus multiple conservation areas. How do you make that decision on a park basis and on a national base?
So we do have different components that we're looking at for SMART. To give an example of Etosha, we've got different stations. So we've divided the park into different zones, and each zone has its own conservation area. Then you have one central point where all conservation areas come together and you get information extracted from those. For components such as the rhino monitoring, I wouldn't share that information with anybody. So it would really be a decision that have to be made at a higher level. Who has access to it? You could have different conservation areas under the rhino monitoring, and that gets then overseen by the National Rhino Coordinator. But yeah, so different components doing different things. For our human-wildlife conflict, we only have one instance of SMART, even though it's being used in different regions. But definitely access and data security is something that's a great concern for us, particularly because of the current situation in poaching and illegal wildlife trade. And it's critical that you really, really make sure that you vet the people who actually have access to the data.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Ed, because you've been involved with the configuration in KWS, just how you separate data from different levels and different types of data.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, we work with permission sets in EarthRanger. So as soon as somebody's given access to EarthRanger, whether you're a ranger who needs to put data onto the system or whether you're a manager who needs to access it to get that data out, when you're given your username and password and we create that profile, we have a set of permission sets which will determine what it is you're able to do on EarthRanger once you have access. So, for example, I'll give a hypothetical. Somebody who's working with communities, human-wildlife conflict, won't necessarily have access to rhino data on EarthRanger. Okay, so they'll have access to everything to do with the HWC, probably some security incidents which overlap with HWC, but they will not see anything to do with the rhino data when they log into EarthRanger. Okay. Likewise, your position in the organization determines what you see. So what a ranger can see when they get into EarthRanger is not the same as what a senior manager can see. So we try and control the security that way, and we can also decide what sets to share with different people. So for example, if there's researchers who need to get certain information out of EarthRanger, you can just filter for that, very simply filter the information that they need to see and export it to them so that they get to see that particular bit of information.
Okay. Yeah, next question, please. Yeah.
My name is Rodney. I'm with Zimpax IT. My question is for Victor. When you do your trainings, I heard you speaking about data analysis. I've noticed when you go to the stations, you've got all this data that's being collected, but sometimes people don't know what to do or how to react or what decision to make when they have that data. Like for instance, there's one site that we went to where we found that I think they did a report on snares, and they had about 150 snares. It's a site that's close to the community, and 150 snares in over 2 months, but no action was taken. For me, do you actually offer, when you do your trainings, do you actually teach people how or what decisions to make when, or how to react to some of this data that they're collecting? And the second question, how did you do you go into agreements with your partners when you get data from them, or how did you go with that process? Did you use your muscle as the government, or you just said, hey, can we have your data? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the question. I'll start by the first one about how that data is being used and how people capture data. First of all, when we noticed that we had gaps, everyone was having their own models of collecting data, we agreed then to have a standardized template. So this template is very well explained. So it's a place where, first of all, you have to ensure that it has the origin where it's coming from. And two, the GPS coordinates, so that then you can map on the map and know which areas are now your hotspot areas. And three, during the trainings, you try to tell guys to look at what are the key things that they need to concentrate on. If it's snares, for instance, what are the sizes of the snares? Is this for the small game, medium, or large? So that then when you're doing your analysis, you'll be able to know which are the most targeted animals going forward. Is it large game, medium, or small? All right? And then we normally take them through simple analysis, for instance, all the rangers, so that even where they are, they can be able to make that analysis based on, just on Excel, for instance, on how to come up with that heat map and know which numbers. And then the advantage now we got with the EarthRanger is the moment the data is in the system, you can just filter, let's say snares for the last 2 months or 1 month, it will give you instantly the numbers. Then now when you populate on the map, you'll see now which areas have got more of that. So that really helped us so much, and this is what is making now even managers to make more informed decisions. Now, when it comes to the second question about getting guys sharing data with us. First of all, it's within our policies, all right? We have a well stipulated strategic plan. And one of the key things there is conservation, which brings all of us together. The second one is collaboration and partnership. And then the third one is now you come in with issues to do with enterprise. Because what we're doing, we are safeguarding the resource for the national government so that revenue comes in terms of tourism. So through the understanding of conservation, we all know conservation is not cheap. It's very expensive. So partners then comes in to assist expand our access and our reach. So through the same spirit, we don't use our muscles as government, but we try to look at it holistically, that we are all doing this for the national benefit. So then through that collaboration and partnership, they share. When it comes to collaring, for instance, before someone does collaring, there's that protocol that is followed. And one of the rider that we put in there is, as you do the collaring, share that data with the national government, share that data with KWS. Then it makes it more easier. So I'm sure as you guys, I know you're planning to go that direction. Yeah, you can try coming in terms of policies, working on your strategic plans, and add in some of the things that you would like to capture going forward.
Hang on a sec, Anthony. George wants to say something.
Just to add on what Victor has said in terms of the government using muscle to obtain data, I think in our case, if you remember what I said earlier, we are in the process of finalizing data sharing protocols. Because again, it depends on the kind of information you're looking at. Right now, information which is security related, be it on patrols, monitoring of various species, issues of human-wildlife conflict, we've already agreed with partners that this needs to be shared with KWS, because at the end of the day, KWS is the legally mandated organization to enforce the laws around human-wildlife conflict and security. Now, when it comes to data on research, we are actually developing nationwide protocols that are going to enable the various partner share data, because we are setting up a national database for everything revolving around wildlife. So when it's research for academics, name it, it's going to be deposited in that national database. So right now, we are just finalizing the draft so that all partners can give their input, and then we roll it out.
Yeah, two quick questions. The first one is over data. We found when we did ours, we generally started from the ground up and we built it ourselves. Is there any intention to develop an industry standard model that can be duplicated? Because there's going to be many other organizations that start to implement. So if you see a carcass, you know what you want to report. If you come across a snare, you have a standard report that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, every organization that does it, and then you also standardize across the industry. So first question, is there intention to standardize or create a minimum base model that other future organizers can use? And the second question is around connectivity. We've moved from SMART to EarthRanger because of the real-time capability and because it's linked into our digital radio network. But you've still got the issue of reports either going in by the radio, which is a manual process and clogs up the radio channel, which we don't want, or you've got your Smart Connect, but that Smart Connect requires GSM or internet, and we don't have that in these big landscapes. So the question is there investigation to seeing how you can convert that Smart Connect to sort of small data packages, for example, that can go over LoRa network or something like that, or is that reliant on that the individual entity organizing will need to contract somebody to do that? Because ideally, if a ranger comes a carcass, we'd like to get that report immediately and not 2 or 3 days later when next they come in communication.
If I may answer that. So your first question about basically templates, data model templates. We do have access to a lot of different templates or a lot of different data models from a lot of our users. And with our new, in fact, the punt for some of the next talks, Jess spoke about Ecoscope and Aquila and Gundi. If you can get to those talks, some of those questions will be answered, where we will at some stage put together a template library of data models. The trouble is that they are very use case and regionally specific. So we can put together regional and use case types of templates, and the intention is at some stage, and looking at Chris Jones over there at this stage, to build that into our models. So you can, like you would with a Microsoft template, pick and choose which parts of a data model you want, and compile your data model quickly and easily. So the intent is there. We have done a couple of regional types of migrations. For instance, in Zambia, in Kafue, with the migration there from SMART to EarthRanger, we adopted the SMART template for Zambia and imported that into EarthRanger. So that's also very easily achievable as well. So if it's electronic, we can manipulate it into EarthRanger. Anthony, remind me of your second question. Okay. Yeah. So there are Smart Park has got the ability now to send information over LoRa. So there's Tim. Good punt for you, Tim. So there is that capacity. And we are also chatting with Jess and Chris the other day. We're looking at being able to do something similar over Garmin inReach networks as well, to send info over the Iridium network. So that progression is there to try and get in areas with very little infrastructure to get the information through to the central position.
Yeah, maybe to add on that, when it comes to integration, let's say with radios, I'll give an example of Kenya Wildlife Service. We've integrated all our resources, that is our digital radio connectivity, into EarthRanger. So we are always able to see where our teams are and what they're able to do. And same to our vehicles and aircrafts. So a reason why we did that and also allowed partners to share their resources in terms of aircraft is whenever we have an incident somewhere, we look at the nearest teams, be it partners or our own teams, and respond to it so that we don't lose any wildlife. Because we are the voices of the voiceless wildlife, so we do that.
There was a
yes,
question. Yeah.
my name is Expa. I am from Tanzania. My question goes to my neighbors from Kenya. I just want to understand what is the relationship between 51 Degrees and KWS. Is it the public-private partnership? Is it the government CSO partnership? And who pays for the upscaling or rollout of this EarthRanger system and tools? Is it donor-funded project? And how much, in terms of percentage, that KWS has put into rolling up the EarthRanger platform all over the Kenya? Asante.
Thank you very much. I think the relationship we have with the 51 Degrees is that of PPP, public-private partnerships. And when we were designing the rollout, we got into an agreement between KWS, an organization called AI2, and 51 Degrees. So we were supported with the initial funding to roll out, the necessary infrastructure, to do training, for staff. And AI2 used 51 Degrees because they had actually been in the game before KWS. And because it's a local company, they deemed it fit to bring them on board so that they can support KWS to capacity build and put the necessary infrastructure in place. Now, I mentioned the issue of hardware and training. But KWS also contributes because whenever trainings are being done, KWS, there's a percentage that gives out. KWS also gives out infrastructure because, like, for example, if you want to set up a command center, KWS will be responsible for availing, the space for you to put the command center. So it's a real partnership. This is a project that is ending next year, but we are envisaging upscaling it because remember, like I said, right now we only have 9 sites that we've installed the command centers. it's not enough yet. So we are looking towards expanding to all our parks and reserves so that each park can have its own, required infrastructure for purposes of feeding into the regional command centers.
Yeah, so just to clarify that as well, because 51, we're a deployment partner with AI2 when it comes to EarthRanger. So we were the ones called in to help out with KWS. And it is a limited project. So the goal at the end of the day is for us to complete our part in terms of introducing it. But also what we're doing at the same time is building capacity within KWS for them to carry out their own trainings in future and to be able to continue the project without 51. So we will step back from this capacity and we'll only be there in terms of support at the end of it. Okay.
The mic's on the way.
Thank you. My name is Longida from Tanzania. I have a question from both teams, Namibia and Kenya. Now let's start from Kenya side. Mr. George, I just want to know the hosting of the applications. Is it on-premise or on cloud? And in terms of administration from both systems and databases, do you have access to database or who is managing the databases? As I find, actually I was trying to simulate experience from my country where connectivity is still a challenge, and I see we are sharing the common challenge from both Namibia and you Kenyans. Is it possible, if not classified, to share what are the approaches you are using to address the connectivity challenges as far as these conservations is concerned? And I find out in terms of success stories, you shared about youth turnarounds in terms of resource mobilizations and reallocations and incentives to park rangers, of which I found it is more of qualitative success. Is it possible to have quantitative EBIT reports showing the maybe reduction of conservation crimes after starting the use of this EarthRanger? Now goes to my sister Claudine. Can SMART have the capability to work on premise, or is a cloud deployment? And the second one is, how is SMART to integrate with the legacy system? I thank you all for a nice presentation. Thank you.
Let me give it a try. It was a full mouth of inquiries, but it's good because we are here to share experiences. I think for us in Kenya, in terms of data storage, we are operating a hybrid system where we have on-site servers at KWS headquarters, as well as the cloud-based solutions. And I can assure you that we were granted access rights, both on-site and in the clouds. Now, in terms of measurements, in terms of quantitative on the impact of the data, it is true that we are able to demonstrate using that data on the impact of the various efforts. Like for example, if you're talking about patrol efforts, have they contributed towards the end result, addressing the problem? You are able to tell because, at a click of a button, you can for example, look at the distribution of the patrols. Have they been able to target your hotspots? There was an example that was given here. An area has snares, for example, are we making any efforts to address the issue of proliferation of snares? You are able to tell within a period of time that because of certain interventions that have been put in a particular place, certain threats have gone down. So it's possible using this. There's something else that I maybe never mentioned here, how we are using EarthRanger. We are able even to manage our assets properly. An issue of fences, for example. Using certain technologies, you are able to tell how effective your fence, is. As a manager, seated on your dashboard, you are able to monitor every day the progress of certain things that you are doing. So in terms of looking at efforts, you are able to do that. Have I answered all your questions, or there's one that I forgot?
Approaches used to resolve the
connectivity issues?
Yes.
Like I said, connectivity is still a challenge to us. We've not been able to sort it out, but currently we are using Wi-Fi in most of our areas. So we just install Wi-Fi, and there's a cost implication doing that. So we are in discussion with our national service provider, internet service providers, just how they can also support in terms of addressing the connectivity issues. But as always, you find that most of the areas where we operate from, and I want to believe that also happens in most of your countries, the infrastructure issue is big. They'll tell you there is no relevant requisite infrastructure, and therefore there's a problem here and there. But we're in discussion with them. Some of them are doing cabling, just to enable LAN and WAN type of connectivity to be installed there. But I can say this is work in progress.
My brother. Your question was whether SMART can be offline and how you can integrate it with legacy databases. On-premise. Yes. So yes, in most of our sites, actually in all of our sites, we have SMART on-premise. So you have SMART desktop, and it can work off. Then you have SMART Connect, that can be, that's the cloud-based version of SMART. So on all sites we have SMART, the data is collected and we have it on-premise. Yes. And whether it's able to integrate with legacy data, yeah, definitely. As long as it's aligned with what you have in your current data model.
Just a very quick one to expand on the connectivity issue. One of the things to just keep in mind is the EarthRanger app has really been really useful in this instance, in that it's accessible offline. So what we're now able to see is rangers are able to go into the field. They're able to feed information directly onto their phones using the EarthRanger app. And then once they come back to their stations and they have access to internet, then upload all those reports onto the system afterwards. And that's really, really helped us in terms of connectivity. Okay.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, unless you want to have one last quick one from Zim.
All right, thank you. My name is Nyasha from Zimbabwe IT. I wanted to ask Kenya and maybe Namibia also. One of my questions is, how does KWS ensure that the data it collects is used only for the purpose of which it was collected for, or is intended for, and it is not shared with unauthorized third parties? Like, for example, maybe we have this issue of internet. Maybe there might be an encryption. Is it encrypted in transit or at rest? Or maybe there may be a hoop within the topology. Maybe it might be hacked within the. Is there any structure which is there? And also, my second question and last one was, how does KWS and also Namibia ensure that they're, but how do they balance, the need to collect and share data with the need to protect the privacy of wildlife and their habitats?
Thanks. I'm going to actually ask Chris Jones to come up to answer the data encryption question and how secure it is.
So the EarthRanger database is hosted in Google Cloud Platform, and so we're using a standard service that Google supports. It's the Cloud SQL Postgres service, and so that is when the data is at rest. So it's stored on Google infrastructure. The database is encrypted. So at that point, data at rest is encrypted. All of our systems live inside of Google Cloud Platform, so no data packets are going outside through any other networks. So when we talk about the web browser, it connects to our system hosted in Google Cloud Platform, and it's using SSL, so that path is encrypted, so any of your password or any data coming out of our system is all encrypted up to your browser. As far as so that data coming down into our system, password or data going up, it's in the cloud platform, and then it talks directly to the database server, and that's all on a private network. So there's no way anyone could sniff that network. So that's how I would describe the end-to-end encryption of the system. If you had any more points on that, I could try to answer, but I think that covers that. Your passwords are all stored and hashed in our system. There's no way you can discover what someone's password, even if you had access to our database, the way that it's hashed. It's using a very common salted hashing system, so there's no way you can go back to the original password. So as far as like password evaluation, it just hashes it again, then compares to what we have stored, and if it's the same, then we know that's you. Is there anything else I can answer on that? Okay. Yeah.
Nyasha, what was your second question? It was about...
My second question, I wrote it down. My second question was, how does Namibia or Kenya Wildlife Service balance the need to collect and share data with the need to protect the privacy of wildlife in their habitats?
It's a tough one. But what I can say to that is, data is normally shared on need basis. And that's the reason why the issue of access rights comes into play. Depending on what kind of data you are asking for and what you want to do with that data is what is going to determine what levels of rights we are going to allocate to you. And most of the time, this is done for purposes of protecting wildlife. Remember, all this data we are collecting here is for purposes of protecting wildlife correctly. So it's not just like an open check where you're giving everybody all the information. So the issue of access rights, depending on the level of responsibility, becomes very critical when you're sharing this information from one party to the other.
Thanks, George. Claudine says pretty much covered there. So, we've run out of time, a little bit over. So thanks very much to the panel, Claudine, George, Ed, and Victor. And thanks for everybody for participating and attending today. So let's go and get some lunch. Thank you.